Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. Let's waste no time and jump right into the topic today, that of virtual reality porn and sex dolls. Several years ago, I saw a documentary entitled Guys and Dolls, which was basically following 4 different individuals who happened to own real dolls. Now, in the documentary, all 4 of the individuals were different from one another. And they had their different reasons for owning the real dolls. They had their different, in fact, each of them owned a different amount of real dolls. But the thing that I noticed out of the documentary when I watched it many years ago, there was this sense of trying to shame the guys for owning the dolls. And back at that particular point in time, I wasn't fully red-pilled. So on the one hand, I kind of maybe looked down on the individuals, but at the same time, there was this unspoken envy of them to an extent, because they had seemingly broken free from the need to play the game, from the need to jump through the hoops. And one of the individuals in the documentary makes a statement that I've always found to be interesting, and I think it's very true of Western culture today, that people come and people go. And he points out that he's had a particular poster in his house for 20 years, or he's had a particular item he got for Christmas as a child for several years, and that it's more easy for him to bond with material things, to bond with things that he owns, more so than it is people and human beings. And I find that, you know, a lot of the technology today has caused that inability to interact. But there's a lot of truth in what he said, because as I've said many times on this program, many people have come and gone, and very few have stayed in my life. And there have been very few people whose lives that I've stayed in. And I think that's just the nature of things. I think that you're only going to have a small tribe of people that you really connect with in this life, and those are going to be the people that are going to be with you throughout. Of course, our media and our culture pushes the idea of the party lifestyle and the going out and just, you know, if I conform, if I do this, if I do that, then, you know, I can be this big jet setter. At least that's what the narrative is pushed particularly and primarily towards women. Now, getting back to the documentary, what I notice now, years later, at the time, it did seem odd. It did seem taboo. But what I notice now, years later, is that it's really not that big of a deal. It's really not that weird or taboo or odd anymore. In fact, it seems to be growing in the mainstream, at least as it relates to MGTOW. I think more guys are becoming accepting of the idea because of the realization of the pitfall of dealing with sentient women, so to speak. In fact, TFM, if you ever watch or listen to his podcasts, you know, has advertisements for dolls on his channel now. And I think that it's becoming something that's being embraced by men who are truly going their own way, because really we don't care what people think of us or what people say of us. We're doing the things that make us happy and fulfill our needs. So I think just like with online dating, where at one time online dating was this taboo thing and thought of as only being a thing for people that couldn't get dates or unattractive people, nowadays it's very part and parcel. In fact, I think most of the dates that people go on nowadays are as a result of things like Tinder and Plenty of Fish and all that, whereas I think it's a very small percentage now of people that actually go on dates with people they meet at work or people they meet in the organic world. And so too, I think that virtual reality porn and sex dolls, if not becoming mainstream in society at large, will be seen as more acceptable as time goes on, and indeed I think is seen as more acceptable even, you know, 5 years later after having seen that documentary. The groundwork for the Metaphysics of MGTOW, the channel there, and I believe the guy's name's Marcus. If I'm wrong, please correct me on that. But Marcus made a statement in one of his videos where in several years, most guys will not have to say that they're MGTOW. most guys will not have to identify as MGTOW because that will simply be the natural default state of most men. And so as that happens, as that acceptance, at least amongst the MGTOW people, because again, we don't really care what the society thinks, as that acceptance of ourselves and that community becomes more and more prevalent and predominant amongst men, so too I think the acceptance of things like VR porn and sex dolls will again gain greater acceptance. But of course, there's always going to be the detractors and the people that are trying to limit the choices of men as far as the sexual outlet goes. And it doesn't take it need not take very long to research that women are already coming against the idea, and the feminist political arms of the different groups out there are already coming against the idea of sex robots and sex dolls. Maybe not so much so VR porn, but there has been a steady opposition towards porn in general. And in fact, I think some of the laws in the UK, and guys from the UK, MGTOWs in the UK, if this is true, then back me up on this. But I think there was some laws passed not very long ago in your all's neck of the woods pertaining to the kind of porn that could be available. So there's always been this, I guess, concerted effort to control male sexuality. And we talked about it in one of the videos that I did a while back on prostitution. Women have all the choices when it comes to reproduction. And nobody comes out and says, we should ban dildos, we should ban vibrators, and all that sort of thing. But when it is something that benefits men, when it is something that gives men another choice, another outlet, then you can darn well bet that women are going to come against it, and not just the feminists either. And that's one of the problems that I have with some of the way that MGTOW content producers and things present the idea, because I feel like some of them go down the rabbit hole of feminism, and everything is blamed on feminism. And if we could just get the feminists and get the ideology of feminism out of things, then things would get better. And the reality of it is it's not feminist, it's not feminism, it's just women. It's women in general. A very fundamental teaching, if you will, in MGTOW is AWOL. All women are like that. And they are. It doesn't matter if they're from India, the UK, Europe, United States, Latin America. Doesn't matter. They're all like that. They all have the hypergamy. They all have female nature. And so all of them, regardless of whether they identify as a feminist or they identify as, a tradcon, none of them want men to have the choice. None of them want men to be in control of their own reproduction and their own sexuality. So they come out with all these fallacies of, sex robots have human rights when they're not even human. They're not organic. They are machines, and that it would be the same as saying like a refrigerator or a microwave has rights. And also sex dolls. It's interesting to me, and there were a couple articles, and I believe TFM also did a program on in Spain, and I think someplace else there was a brothel that had where you had the ability to rent a sex doll, and the sex dolls actually outcompeted the organic women, which should show you or go to say or seems to suggest that female women today are so toxic and so obnoxious to be around that men would rather pay to have sex with a doll than they would an organic female. And so that ought to really, but of course nobody looks at that and sees that maybe there's a problem with women, and there's a problem with, the modernity of how feminism and how women have evolved over time now that a lot of these structures and things are not in place. It always goes back on the men, and the men being the issue. So I say all that to say this. I think I've seen some VR porn, and it's kind of cool, really, to be quite honest with you. Just virtual reality in general is kind of cool. This whole idea of, are we seeing what's outside of the mind, or is what's outside inside our mind? Or we seek the one who sees, so to speak. Is this all outside of me or inside of me? So it's kind of a cool concept, and I think that it will really pave the way, in the way that just normal porn has paved the way for a lot of guys to break free from their biological imperative and to break free from all of the pitfalls and all of the risks that are associated with trying to fulfill those biological imperatives within the framework of what women dictate and what society dictates. So just in the way that normal porn, and again, you have to think about, several years ago, all of pornography was, DVD sales and VHS sales and so on and so forth. And a lot of people never thought the idea of online porn would ever catch on. And now it's foreign to think that there was ever any other way to view it. But just as in regular porn gives men a lot of freedom and a lot of ability to express their sexuality in less risky ways, so too will the VR porn and the sex doll and sex robot, the ability to have those things as well, will also not only give men more options, but also enhance those options beyond what they are now. I'm not really sure if I've covered the basis of what you all wanted me to talk about. Obviously, I think that the VR porn and the sex dolls and the sex robots, I think, are good things. I think that they can only benefit men, and they can only benefit particularly men going their own way. But again, as has been stated, and I don't think I'm covering any new ground here, but don't be surprised when they try to enact legislation, because the shaming just doesn't work anymore. We don't care, it doesn't matter to us. We're too busy going about our lives and trying to figure out, how we can make our lives better through, whatever means we feel like, is necessary. Because again, MGTOW is tailor made. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a McDonald's assembly line. So the shaming thing, it's just kind of out the window. I think a lot of guys are waking up and walking away, and they don't really care about the shaming because, in the end, the shaming isn't going to bankrupt me. In the end, the shaming isn't going to have me pay child support. It's not going to put me in prison because I lost my job and couldn't pay alimony or child support. The shaming is what it is. And we've realized no matter what we do or don't do, it's never going to be good enough. And there's always going to be something, something critical said, or we're always going to be criticized. So the shaming has lost all effect on most guys, even most non-MGTOW guys, in my opinion, because we realize that, in the end, the shaming really can't hurt me. Because if I'm going my own way, it doesn't really matter what anybody else says or what their opinion is. What is really going to be on the horizon, like I said, is going to be the legislation, the attempts to marginalize and the attempts to make it illegal to participate in those sort of things. But in the end, the free market, I think, is going to win out. Wherever there is a demand for something, there will be a supply. Wherever there's money to be made, and I think that, the right people could make a lot of money off this stuff. Wherever that is prevalent, then a lot of times it will overcome the politics. But again, they always bring it back to, well, how does this hurt women? Instead of looking at, it doesn't really hurt women, it actually helps men. But if it doesn't do something beneficial for women, then it is automatically seen as a bad thing, regardless of the fact that it may do something great and may make men's lives better. Because again, nobody is interested in your happiness, your health, and your wealth. That being said, this is all the time that we have today on the Days of Thunder. Hope you enjoyed the program today, and remember, you're free to do as you're told.